Well, hey, you guys. Thanks for joining us. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to tackle composition here. But before we get into that, would you give us a shout out where you're from? I always like to see who's here with us. Unfortunately, we can't hear Jared. We've had an ongoing audio issue with our software and we cannot figure it out. It doesn't make any sense. You know those little gremlins that get into your computer in the middle of the night and they just do things and nobody can figure out why? Well, we've got one of those. And there's Lou. Hey, Lou, from across the pond. Good to see you, always. So why don't we just jump in here? I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm Marc Silber. I am an author, and I've written a bunch of books, including on composition, which we're going to talk about today. Whoop, there goes one of them down there. This is what I'm going to be pulling information from. And Susie, hola, hello. I want to, first of all, I want to let you know that our sponsor here is our friends at Bay Photo Lab. And you know, these guys are awesome. You guys can get your prints made from them, with them. You can also, and somebody just asked me about this, scan your negatives. Now this is this is a total top of the line drum scanner. My belief is if you're going to scan your negatives, you should get the highest quality scan you can possibly get. You don't want to compromise with that, and you don't want to do it again. So they're going to give you 20% off on drum scans. So, you know, find your best negatives or slides. You can get slides scanned too and send them in. You can get 30% off on books and cards. Those are always cool. And you can get 20% off on acrylic prints from them. And you can always get 25% off on your first order. So be sure to do that. Before I forget, whoa, that's not the right screen. I want to remind you to subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our shows coming up. And if you guys don't mind, please participate in the chat and also give us a like. That seems to help the process. Now, we're going to get into my class that I gave. I've given this before, and I gave it last week, and I'll show you who I gave it to. But the thing that you got to remember about composition, and this is going to be a two-part, I can't possibly cover all this information in one YouTube live, but we're going to start this week and then we'll finish next week. So think about what stories you want to tell with your camera. I mean, that's the key thing. What story do you want to tell with your camera? I'm going to add, if I can figure out how to do this, I'm going to add myself up here. Let's just see. Kind of forgotten how to do this. New camera overlay. Let's see. Is that it? Yes, I hit the right button. Okay, good. So I'll just put myself in here, down here. Okay, I feel more connected to you guys. So what story do you want to tell? Your camera is a tool, and you got to use your tool, and composition is one of the tools you use to tell your story. And it's a big part of how you tell your story. My goal for this class is to increase your composition vocabulary. Just like words. The more words you know, the better you can tell your story. And in our game here with your camera, it's all about knowing the various tools to tell your story with. And this is from the class I gave last week at the Carmel High School. These guys were happy campers. I gave them each a copy of my book, Advancing Your Photography. It was just really heartwarming for me to see this next generation coming up the line so enthusiastic about learning photography and video. Awesome. And I'm actually going to be taking on a couple of these guys as interns, which is pretty cool. So I'm not going to belabor this. You guys should know from my books and what I've told you before that there are 5 stages of photography. Quickly, visualization is getting it in your mind before you press the shutter. before you even pick up a camera, because you don't even know what camera you're going to use until you got it visualized. Let's say you're going to shoot underwater. Well, you want a GoPro. If you're shooting a video, obviously you have to have a camera that shoots video. You might want to shoot film. Whatever your vision is, you're going to then use your equipment here. You can see that's the next thing. You got to know your equipment. And as our friend Bob Holmes says, know your camera so well that it doesn't get in the way of your photographs. That can happen. You want to capture, which is what composition is. It's capturing. Lighting is also capturing. Timing is also capturing. And then you process your images. I just finished a Lightroom class, a brand new one. Jared edited. It's going to come out really soon. You guys will see that. And then finally, you want to share your work to the world. Then you go, and I want you guys to try these tools out. You can't just leave this in your head. You got to put them to use. So make a note of these things. If you got my book, go out and use them. Lorraine did an amazing thing. She actually, I believe, covered all 83 of them. If she didn't, she covered a huge chunk of them, and she sent me an example. I love seeing that. So I'd love to see you other guys do that as well. So how to advance your composition. Let me fix that so we're not cut off there. Don't get hung up in the rules. Train your eye. You got to use your eye. You got to go out and find images. Use your skills of visualization, and remember, these are guides. They're not rules. They're not inflexible laws. They're things that you use to tell your story, but don't get hung up in any rules. There are no rules to composition. Okay, training your eye is really important. Do that. Do what you see Holly doing here. You can do it this way. You can do it that way. I generally just do this. Anytime you're out and about, you're taking a walk, you're in a line at a grocery store, you're on a train, people will think you're really cool. It's a cool thing to do this. And just like every sport, you've got to constantly train. You got to train your eye. You got to look for photographs. They don't just jump out at you. You've got to find it. Where can we upload our image? I'm not sure which one you're talking about. We're not taking any images today, but maybe Jared can answer that question. The very first lesson I learned was from my uncle, Sambo. He was a World War II Top Gun pilot, also an avid photographer. You can see him shooting a selfie in a mirror with his Nikon F. And he took me out and showed me the first thing I needed to know was how to frame a photograph. Framing is putting an edge or a border on your photographs by finding and including a natural frame like a tree branch or the edge of a building, and it helps the viewer see what you want them to see. It adds depth, layer, interest, and even contrast to your photograph. I'll show you some examples. I'm not going to show Chris Burkhart's interview. I'm not actually set up with that. We'll do that another time. This is an example of a frame. This is a fence in Big Sur, and you can see the fence and the tree branch form the edge of the frame that's closest to you in the foreground, and that actually gives you a border and it gives you a layer. And then what it does is it puts your attention on the background, which is the road and the mountain range. This is the Santa Lucia Mountains going into the ocean. You put that together, and your frame helps your eye go where you want the viewer to go. This is another example of a frame, and this is a photograph I took in high school. I was basically about the same age the kids that I taught last week were, which is one of the reasons I was so excited to do the class. I went off in my senior year. If you could read about it in my book, Create, right here. I tell a story about it. I went off in my last semester high school, went to to above Mazatlan, which is actually even with the tip of Baja California, up in the mountains. 1 day by Jeep, 2 days by foot into this very remote village. You'd hardly call it a village, it was a hut. And we built a medical dispensary. These people back there had no medical help. This was one of the workers that we worked with. His name was Fausto, really cool guy. He looks much more serious than he generally does. But I framed him in the window. And I got him to give me a kind of a tough guy look. It's the look that was much more interesting than if he was smiling or frozen. A lot of times you'll see people, especially in countries where they're not used to being photographed, they'll freeze up. You don't want that. But using the frame of the window really helped show, where do you want me to look? And this is another frame right next to it. It just adds interest and depth. This is an example from our friend Bob Holmes of framing between people. And the guy who's singing, the light is coming off of his book there, which is really cool. But he's framed between these people. So you can use almost anything as a frame to help exemplify who you're looking at. So you notice I crossed out the law of thirds. It's not a law, it's a tool. And you can use it. It doesn't always work and you don't always need it. There's many, many great photographs where the subject is dead center or way off to the one side. You know, there's all sorts of places you can put somebody. But in this case, this was a photograph by David Smith, who I interviewed. This is from the Kruger National Park, where I met him in South Africa. And he said you can try placing what you want to draw attention to in one of the lines, the intersection of lines, and it can add a dynamic pull to there's a little, anyway, we'll fix that later, to your eyes. Now, one thing he said that's really important is leave space wherever your subject is looking, leave space for them to look into. What would happen if it was cropped right here? It would feel very claustrophobic. It'd feel like the subject can't really get their space, their view. So always leave space for your subject. Same thing is true if the subject is looking down or up into the frame. Leave space for them to look into, like the leopard is basically slanting down. Leave space for that leopard to look into. There is a false belief, that people can walk around and just shoot from eye level all the time. That gives you pretty... we're always looking at eye level. So what happens is you just kind of get a boring image that way. I mean, of course I shoot from eye level, but try to remember there are lots of different angles, and I'll show you just a few of them right now. This is from a book, and it's not a still photography book. It's called How to Shoot a Movie Story. It's loaded with information. You can still buy it on Amazon. I really recommend it to you. Camera angles can control an audience's attention and reactions to a remarkable degree. They can emphasize what you want your audience to see and how you want them to see it. Very important, and that's true in filmmaking, and it's certainly true in film and still photography as well. So here's some examples. This was a photograph I took in the 7th grade. You can see on this side, straight up. On the right, I turned the camera. It turned out to be about 18 degrees, and it made for an interesting photograph. It's called a Dutch angle in filmmaking, which is basically turning your camera on an angle. And what it does is it can put things off balance. It can create tension. It can create not disease, but unease. It can create a feeling of, if it's really extreme, mania, terror, bewilderment. It magnifies tension. In this case, there was a lot of tension already in those chairs that were balanced, awkwardly like that. So I accentuated it by turning it on its angle. Now, if you're trying to make people feel calm and peaceful, you don't use this. But if you want to add that little element of tension, definitely use it. Hey, what's cool is try it, whatever. Turn your camera and see if it works. It's just another pixel. It's another set of pixels. You don't have to use it. This was, the Eiffel Tower. Now, when I go to a place that's been photographed a lot, I try to come away with something that doesn't look like a postcard. In this case, I have a lot of images of the Eiffel Tower look just like a postcard. But this one is I was angling up, and then I turned it into a black and white, which didn't look like a postcard. All sorts of different angles. High angles reduce the height of a subject and slow down motion, and it creates a superiority for the viewer. This is, we'll give you some examples of that. This is by our friend Anna Cooperberg, who I've interviewed. Now you notice we're looking down on the puppies. It's making them appear a little bit smaller, and us, from our viewpoint, looking down on them. It certainly accentuates, our view, which is these are cute puppies. Now, we're not way, way, way high. If we were standing way up on a ladder, then those puppies would look really small. But we are looking down on them. And you'll see in a minute another example. Let me move myself out of the way here. Whoops, sorry. Okay. A little technical difficulty. So, or if you want to hold this, you want to show the whole scene like Bob Holmes did of these two guys eating this amazing array of food, you can get up high as he did to capture that whole image. Now, if he shot it at eye level, all you'd see was them and a bunch of spoons sticking out. You'd go, what was that? What are they eating? But he got up high, he, photographed down. Now, the other thing is you can do an overhead shot. This is Bob also. And this was an establishing shot that he used in his story about this vineyard. Shot it with a drone. Shot video, but also stills. Drones are awesome because you can get up high. And you can find things you can't see otherwise. I mean, you can find like this, the tractor and the vineyard fields. You can see the curve of a river that you couldn't see if you're just standing on the ground. There's all kinds of cool things. If you are able to add a drone to your toolkit, they're really handy. Low angles exaggerate height, speed up motion, and makes the subject command attention. So remember the puppies a moment ago? Hunter Freeman shot low, which really accentuates these dogs, puts them front and center into the frame, and they appear much bigger than they actually are because we're low. It's another cool tool. I love Hunter Freeman. He is just such a playful photographer. He's so cool. And I have all these guys' interviews. You guys should watch them later on. Side angles gives you the feeling of increased speed. This is from Florian Schultz, an amazing wildlife photographer, nature photographer. Shot this musk ox. From the side, it actually speeds up their motion. You notice that he also panned the camera because the foreground and the background are blurry, but the musk ox is still. So he had to move the camera along with it while it was moving. That's a good technique to remember. And then Anna Cooperberg photographing this one child at eye level. When you shoot at eye level, especially when you connect with someone's eyes, you connect with the subject. Now, I gave a critique just recently. This was for someone showing a before and after smile of their patients, and it was good, but it cut out their eyes and cut out their face. So I said, make sure you include the full face, because the thing we do as humans is we connect with people's eyes. Same thing with animals. You connect with their eyes. They say eyes are the windows to the soul. Very true. You immediately go to the person's eyes. And a skill that you need to have as a photographer is looking at people. Don't dart away. Don't be all caught up in your camera. Look at the person. After you get your camera set up, your main focus should be on them and looking at them and connecting with them. If you're shy, you need to practice this. There's actually a course that we offer as part of my consulting group on effective communication. Yes, I have a consulting group, and we do offer this to businesses, but it could It could easily be delivered to you guys as photographers. One day I'm going to open up a whole consulting branch just for photography. Stay tuned. Okay, geometry. My mentor as a photographer was Henri Cartier-Bresson. You guys should look him up if you're not familiar with his work. Buy his books on Amazon. Go to an exhibit if you have one around. He said, the greatest joy for me is geometry. That means a structure. It's a sensuous pleasure, an intellectual pleasure, at the same time to have everything in the right place. It's a recognition of an order which is in front of you. It's a very cool quote, and you'll notice a lot of geometry in his photographs. Now, this isn't the greatest photograph in the world, doesn't really have a punctuation point, doesn't have a subject, but it is an illustration of geometry. This is the Bixby Creek Bridge, which has been photographed and used in many, many films. If you ever saw Big Little Lies, they use it in their intro. It's in Play Misty for Me. It's in a lot of films and a lot of ads. It's very photogenic. It's in Big Sur, and the fire, we just had a fire up here in the mountains. It's been put out, thankfully. Thank you, firefighters, it was about a 5 or 6 day fire. It was very scary. We hate to have these fires, but they put it out. But it does have a lot of geometry. The arc of the bridge, the line here, the rectangles, even these pyramid shapes in the rocks here. Lots of geometry. Look for geometry. It's always going to be interesting. Just look for it. It's always there. Patterns are really cool. And we have patterns, but what's even more interesting than a pattern is what we call a broken pattern. Let me show you what I mean by that. My wife Jan at the d'Orsay Museum in Paris, she basically art directed this shot. So we see lots of patterns here. The pattern of the clock, divided into all sorts of cool geometry in segments here. The pattern of these braces. Lots of patterns here. The circular patterns is your main pattern. So she didn't stand straight in the center. She stood off to the side because that broke the pattern. It does something for your eye, and it's very intriguing. Look for patterns and how you can break them. Bob Holmes. This is his vineyard shot. Just patterns. Not very interesting. I mean, so it's a drone shot of this vineyard, but when we add the tractor, it breaks the pattern. It also, hi River, she's sitting outside my door here, my window. It also adds punctuation with the red of the tractor. Becomes a very interesting photograph. But take away that, not much interest. Sometimes all it takes is that one point to add total interest to your photograph. Diagonal lines add vitality, and they can add symmetry and interest. This is an example of Bob's award-winning photograph, Travel Photographer of the Year, and he tells a story about how he stood in this location. The first woman came along. That was kind of cool. He got a frame. Second woman got another frame. Third woman, wow, this is starting to look really cool. Another frame. But when the fourth woman appeared and put the whole thing together, look at the colors. The diagonal line adds a feeling of motion and adds a dynamic quality. Wow. If you guys ever have the opportunity, you should take Bob Holmes' workshop, and you should take his course if you can't go in his physical workshop. Take his course, which is right here in our library. Jared, maybe you can pop up the link to it. You guys should really, really take this course. Here's another example of Bob Holmes. He's a genius photographer. The guy is a total genius. So, symmetry. He broke the symmetry up with the kids coming up the stairs. Take the kids away? So what? It's the stairs. Who cares? Add the kids. It becomes a very interesting photograph with the feeling of motion from those kids. Awesome. Leading lines, converging lines lead your eye to the subject. Chris Burkhardt mentioned that in his interview, which we're not playing right now. So here you have one of my photographs, leading lines of the road leading to this girl, one of my former girlfriends, Mary, and she and I were walking to the stable where she had a horse. She's carrying her saddle. I think she turned around. I directed her. I said, hey, you walk ahead. I'm going to get your photograph. And I think she turned and said, well, so what's happening? Are you coming or not? And so she's holding the saddle out. She's holding her arm out. It's an interesting image. I just created a composition field guide, which you guys very soon will be able to download for free. And this is one of the photographs in it. It's a field guide that you can use on your phone to get ideas when you're out shooting. Very handy. Capturing the moment. Our friend Cartier-Bresson coined that phrase. This is the photograph that I took in the 8th grade of my friends jumping off a sand dune. I directed the shot. I took photographs from the side. They weren't that interesting. And then I got down below them. The sun is setting behind them, so they're silhouetted. And I got down below them and I said, look, you guys, when I tell you to jump, you jump. And at that moment, I had to press the shutter at the right moment, because if I waited even 1 second, that arc would have disappeared. That's the trick with capturing the moment. You actually have to go ahead of the action, because by the time you push your finger, there's always a lag, and there's a lag even in the internal mechanism of your camera. You have to anticipate the action and go a split second ahead of it. If you wait, it's over. This is why you never want to be fiddling with your camera, because those fiddle times, you're losing those great images. When you're looking in the back or wondering if you have your ISO set, or, am I focused right, or any of those things, you're going to miss a photograph. You want to be like instinctive with your camera, so you never, ever, ever, ever miss those shots. This is one of my favorite photographs, and it's been published more than any other photograph of mine. 8th grade. Wow, we got through here. I didn't think we were going to make it through all that. I guess I forgot. So here's, do you guys have any questions? Put them in the chat. This is the exercise. Find one of the points of composition that I covered that you haven't used and test it out. Take some images, and you can put it in. I put assignments here, but put it in the AYP Club link. Just put it in there and just say, hey, this is from the composition class. So you guys can put it in there and other people can comment on it. That would be cool. I made available to these guys an internship. If you happen to be somewhere near the Monterey Bay area, you could apply for this internship also. I'm only taking 2 people. And you can find me either through my email address there or through Instagram. You can message me, and of course you know where to find me on YouTube. I am taking 2 interns this spring and summer. It should be fun. I've had lots and lots of interns over the years. Okay, well, there you go, you guys. If you have questions, now is your chance, or forever hold your peace, about how does composition work? What do I need to do? Why am I composing this image? Whatever's in your mind. You guys should also, while you're at it, if you don't have my book, Jared, give them a link. You can get this book free. Just pay for the publishing. Pay for the publishing. My mouth is just not in sync with my brain right now, but pay for the shipping and we'll send you the book. You can also then order these other 2 books, okay, as ebooks if you go ahead and get that. So Jared will put that in there. And that's what I want to cover with you guys. So try these things out this weekend. Add to your composition vocabulary. Test it out. Move around. Change your angle. Do all these things, right? Get out of whatever is don't get stuck in a rut ever. Something I wanted to mention at the beginning of this, I talked to you guys a lot about why you got to set goals, but you can set a goal for each photo shoot, for each session. What do I want to come away with? And if you're going out to try these composition tools, your goal can be, I want to get as many of these tools photographed as I can. I want to mix things up. Set that goal, come back and process those images. All right? Boom. Okay, you guys, thanks for joining me again. And remember to subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of these videos that are coming up. We're going to have Dan Milner, I believe not next week, but the week after next. That'll be really a lot of fun. So hop in there with us and like this video, share it if you'd like. There's a lot of information I packed into this short video. I mean, a lot. So Jared will probably release this in 2 segments. You should. So that'll be coming up. Remember, leave your comments, like, share, subscribe. And what am I going to say at the end? I want you guys to say this with me. Remember to get out and capture your own images of life. Take care, you guys. See you next week.